Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. My name is Sharon. I will be doing some quick housekeeping items for this Ask the Expert session, and then we'll get started. This is Ask the Experts, Empower Data-Backed Decision Making with Power BI, Power Automate, and Azure Synapse Analytics. Just some quick notes on what to expect in this session and how to interact with our experts, and then we'll get started. Please use the chat box to ask your questions. We will be answering verbally and over chat. They will appear to the attendees after they go through our approval process. You can also use the thumbs up button to note which questions are repeat questions. Please do not spam our moderators in chat. They're going to be doing the best they can to answer as many questions as possible. I'd also like to note that this session is being recorded and will be available on demand post-event. We ask that you not record on your side. Lastly, please adhere to the Microsoft Code of Conduct. It is posted in the chat and here for you to review. And with that, I will hand it off to our experts. Ronald, Rupali, Magrinka, all yours.
Great. So, hi everyone. We have Rupali and I are from the Power BI team, and are happy to be here to kind of take your questions. I'll just make a quick statement to say that we might not have kind of the answers to all your questions, but what we will do is take your questions and find the answers, and then we'll post a quick blog after Ignite with these questions, so that we make sure we close the loop with you. So just as a kind of FYI, that if we don't get to it today, look out on our Power BI blog page, and we'll try and get those questions answered as much as we can.
And also to introduce myself, I'm Mriganka Fotida. I'm a product manager in the Process Advisor. So if you have any questions for Process Advisor, especially the new capability we just talked about in the earlier session for process mining, which is now in preview, happy to answer any questions about it.
Great. So I see the first question around, when does Azure Purview support Azure Analysis Service Models? Without this object, our Purview picture is very limited since we use AES for our enterprise model in most Power BI reports. Yeah, so that is a topic that is being discussed actively within the product team. We don't have sort of a definitive timeline to share at this point, but you know, we'll sort of take that, and once we kind of have more kind of definitive or a bit more of a guideline to share back with you, we'll sort of we'll include it as part of the blog response. So thank you for that question, Steve. Is hybrid tables different than HTAP, Azure Synapse, and Azure Cosmos DB integration? Probably would you have any insight on that one?
I'm going to assume it is. I don't know what the intent of the question is. So Joel, if you want to talk a little bit about what the HTAP Azure Synapse integration is, that might be helpful to us. Just for context, hybrid tables is more a Power BI concept that allows you to mix and match data between your imported model as well as direct query, so you can have quick analytics on top of it. So for example, if you have, let's say, imported data for the last year and you're trying to join it with data from just yesterday to get like really quick response times, that's going to become possible with hybrid tables. So it's more a performance optimization concept within Power BI than it is something related to Cosmos or Azure Synapse specifically.
Marika, I see a question from Debbie about Process Advisor. Maybe would you be able to give some insight on that?
Absolutely. Let me take a look. So Debbie's question is, I'm a little lost as to the type of data that you would want to view in Process Advisor. I'm assuming it's not standard data that you import into Power BI. So the process mining, in the end, you end up visualizing your processes and then identifying inefficiencies and bottlenecks. So as a first step, when you are looking at, okay, what is the data that you want to import and what type of data you want to import, you want to think about a process that you want to get more insights onto. Let's say there is a customer-facing application or even a procure to pay, as we saw in the example in the earlier session. So there would be maybe event logs or telemetry data that is associated with that application or that process that you can then bring in and load into Process Advisor. And once you actually have uploaded that data, then we would on our side visualize the process for you, as well as generate the analysis for you to deep dive on.
There's a question here. I'm not clear what the relationship is between Power BI and Azure Synapse Analytics. What are the typical situations in which an organization needs Azure Synapse in addition to Power BI? Think of Azure Synapse as your data layer and think of Power BI as your business intelligence layer, right? So often people have data in whether it's in warehouses, data lakes, whether it's in SQL databases, whatever it is, that's the equivalent of where you would use Azure Synapse. So your entire data store, your Synapse is your data warehouse, and Power BI is where you do the reports and the consumption of the data. So Power BI is sort of like the tip of the iceberg that your business users use to interact with the data that is being stored in Azure Synapse. It could be operational data, it could be data coming from IoT devices, it could be any data that is living in Azure Synapse.
I see Joel has a question on Process Advisor too. His question is, when demoing process mining, the demo went from connecting to data instantly to a process map. Was there a few steps missing, or was the data sufficient in the demo to generate the map? So Joel, a very good question. The two steps that are not visible in the earlier demo, but there's a whole walkthrough in the on-demand session, which is there by Christine Jeffson late in the day, and that you can see the end-to-end exactly every step that is there. The data was sufficient. So the data that was mapped in the column selection that had happened, that is sufficient to analyze and generate the visual map. The two steps that you had not seen is like once they press save, they landed into a portal page where they had to go and click on the analyze button and confirm they wanted to analyze the data, and then the visualization of the process map is done and shown to them. But from a data perspective, that was sufficient.
There's actually a fair number of questions on hybrid tables and specific capabilities. I think we'll end up addressing those in a blog. Hybrid tables are currently in preview, and so we'll take a look at all the questions and get you the details addressed in a blog.
see a question here on adding version control to Power BI reports and data sets. I think today Power BI, there's integration between Power BI and GitHub, where you can leverage the GitHub functionalities to help you manage your versioning and deployments. So I think to that question, the way we offer that capability is through the integration with GitHub. I'll see a question around export to Excel tables and matrices matching Power BI's format is really cool, and it will help us a lot. When is it planned to roll out? And do you know support for conditional formats is on the roadmap? Right. So for that question, I would invite you to join the OD167 on-demand session, where we'll provide more detail on that functionality. And as well as the timing, right now we didn't commit to a timing at the moment, but we're looking to make that available sort of in the hopefully in the first quarter calendar of the new year.
I see a question from Ron on Process Advisor, which is on Process Advisor, what is required to be installed on-prem at the client to monitor the data? Or is it just importing process data from, say, Excel or other format into cloud? So Ron, currently the process mining functionality that we have is specifically where you would pull in the data from your event logs or any other your systems of record, and then in a file, upload it or connect using the rich functionality of Power Platform data flows to pull that data in. And then we will visualize on top of that. So there is nothing that is running on-prem on that. For task mining, which capability is being generally available since May, is where you can do end-to-end user interactions and you can record them. When you go ahead and you do that recording, you would need to download Power Automate Desktop as part of generating the recordings that would be analyzed to generate the visual process map.
There's a question on the disconnect between Power Query Desktop and Power Flow in Power BI service. I'm going to assume this meant data flows, and there's slightly different capabilities in Power BI and then data flows in Power Query and data flows in Power BI. And yes, we're looking at consolidating those as we go forward. No definitive timelines or roadmap yet, but it is something that's under consideration. There's a question on, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just going to say there's a question around whether there's any plans to bring the model building experience in desktop to Synapse. And I think so today there is a maker experience in the Power BI integration with Synapse. With that, there's functionality for you to model data directly in that experience. If it's different, if sort of the question is different than that, or if there's certain set of capabilities that is sort of there's a gap between what you're expecting, please feel free to kind of nominate that as an idea on the on our ideas portal.
There's a question on, are there limitations of Power BI in Teams? If so, what's the timeline for those feature updates? The Power BI app in Teams basically supports all the capabilities of the Power BI service. So all the consumption capabilities, including creating and sharing reports, scorecards in goals, which you saw in the presentations, dashboards, data sets, data flows, and even you can do things like manage permissions of workspaces. There are a few sort of like admin type capabilities in terms of tenant and capacity admin scenarios that you can't quite do through Teams, because Teams has been optimized more for the business user and the analyst scenario rather than like a pure admin workspace or admin workstation. So that's the main difference between the capabilities. There's a blog post I can post here with the details. Let me, how do I do this? So I can publish this and then respond with the blog post for the link there. Cool. And if you can share with us if there are specific gaps that you've noticed that you wanted to see closed, or if you have an admin scenario for the things that I called out as gaps, feel free to let us know in chat, and the Eng team's listening, so we can always figure out how to do it with roadmaps or add it to the ideas forum, even better. I'll take another question. When would hybrid tables and Power BI Gen 2 be available for use in our production tenants? Power BI Gen 2 is available today. It was generally available as of, I think, a couple of weeks ago. So that's available right now. Hybrid tables, the team's working on it. We will keep you posted through our Power BI blog as soon as it's available.
I can take one for Process Advisor. There is, regarding Process Advisor, is it possible to extract multiple separate processes from the source data, process exploration? Currently, we do extract only the processes from the data that you provide, which are connected to each other. So like there's sub-processes and they are connected to the Uber data that is there, then those will be there. Currently, we do not support multiple completely different processes to being shown at the same time.
Okay, there's a question here asking whether it's a best practice to store data in Dataverse and then sort of analyze through Synapse and Power BI, and whether that's the best practice. I think I want to say, like, that's not the only option. We'll sort of what we're demonstrating there is the benefit of when you store data into the Dataverse. First, you get the benefit of Dataverse, which is you get a structured schema and kind of security and sort of a data structure to help you get up and going quickly. And then from there is sort of integration that's being built in across the Microsoft Cloud stack, whether that is sort of across all the Power Platform or through Synapse, to help make connecting to that data source much easier. So I think that's what we're suggesting in terms of when you connect the Dataverse to whether that's Synapse or whether that is the Power BI or kind of the other Microsoft Cloud services, there's definitely benefit there. But that's not to say like Dataverse is the only place for you to store your data. You can certainly store it in kind of the really any available data store that you might prefer today.
Couple questions on Power BI Embedded. So could you expand more on how Power BI Embedded will work? And more questions on how do you embed Power BI in a couple of other scenarios. So Power BI Embedded essentially allows you to embed a Power BI report or a dashboard into a web application, a website. So basically you can control the experience around that report for your consumers. You can embed it into an application. We often do that internally within our Dynamics products. You can do that on like a portal where you want your internal teams to come into a specific place and look at Power BI. I'm going to paste a link with more details on embedded from our documentations site. Happy to take more questions or follow up with more links.
I see one from Ron about Process Advisor, which is, can Process Advisor determine volumes or how many times a process is executed per day and how many people? In other words, count the number of times a process is executed, how long the processes took to complete, etc. All the things that can feed a business case for FTE savings. Absolutely. So one of the ways process mining and task mining techniques are used are to identify where the bottlenecks are, how much time is actually being spent, and from that extract exactly the savings and ROI that could be there. So not only do you identify, can you identify the problem up front, but once you have put a solution in place, then you can go back and do the same analysis and figure out what were the savings from the new solution that has been built to actually combat that.
Team, as you look for one or two last questions to wrap out our afternoon, I do want to point out, everyone, we have a number of resources on the screen for you. I encourage you to visit these sessions and links to continue learning. So team, we have about time for one or two more questions.
Yeah, I see a question here. Is Azure Synapse meant to replace using SQL or in addition to? I think the recommendation there is definitely in addition to. Synapse provides you with a whole bunch of additional analytics capabilities that is kind of not what SQL is designed for. So I would say in this case, SQL becomes your data source, and then Azure Synapse becomes your analysis engine, and then you can push that result out to places like Power BI for visualization or for additional analysis.
And as you look through and find that one last question, we will remind everyone that we will collect all this information together and do our best to continue responding throughout the event. Ronald, Rupali, one last question or thoughts that you'd like to share with everyone?
Yeah, I think for me, maybe like just the final thought is thanks everyone for joining. Sorry we can't get to your question. There's definitely like a lot of questions and a lot of great questions. What I would suggest is if you feel like there is kind of capabilities that are missing, please do head over to the ideas forum and let us know what you would like to see. And also, you see here with the additional on-demand sessions that are available, you'll probably be able to get some of the questions answered through those on-demand sessions as well. You know, there's looking through the questions, I feel like there's really one of these on-demand sessions that will sort of have more specific answers for your questions. So yeah, so that's it from my end.
Well, thank you everyone for your time and for your questions and for being so involved this afternoon. We do really appreciate it. We have a lot of exciting sessions and information coming your way. Please do continue to join us, and we hope that you've had a wonderful Ignite so far and will continue to do so.